Okay, the topic for this week is a very serious one, post-Camino blues. Yep, it's a thing, and someone posted a comment on the channel recently which prompted this video, so coming right up. So what do I mean by post-Camino blues? And thank you, sorry, I should have noted your name, whoever posted the comment. It said something like, no one ever warned me, I feel like crap. Yeah, post-Camino blues is a real thing. So let me talk about it, and obviously this is just from my perspective. As always, that's all I can share. And also, you may or may not suffer from it. But let's at least talk about it so that we know what it is, and if you come across it, you'll recognise it, and maybe I can give you some tools to help with it. So, I should also add, in talking about this on a forum recently, someone remarked, well, I guess it depends on your start point. And I think that was a really good point as well. Not from where you start the walk, but where you're starting from in terms of your, if you like, emotional well-being, you know, your home life and all the rest of it, so that the Camino experience may have a greater or lesser impact on you. But I'll kind of explain that as we go through. So, what are some of the things that you may go through? If you think about it, the degree to which you suffer from the Camino blues is going to be down to a few different variables. First of all, as I mentioned, your kind of start point in terms of your emotional well-being. It's also going to be impacted a degree by the route that you're walking. So for example, I 2 months ago finished a 60-day Camino. A large part of that was on the Via de la Plata and the Camino Invierno, both fairly remote routes with not many pilgrims on them. And so some would say it was a very lonely Camino. I actually quite like that, but you know, those were very lonely routes as opposed to when I was on the Camino Frances for 3 days, bridging between the two. It was immensely busy. So, you know, the different route that you're on can have an impact. The degree of social interaction could have an impact. So I'm one of these sort of weird introvert extroverts. I love the solitude of walking alone. And in fact, I'll do a video about, you know, walking with other people, and I think I did that a little bit too much on my last Camino. I should have walked on my own more. But I love the peace and solitude of walking on my own, but I do enjoy company in the evenings and chit-chatting with people and that kind of stuff. So the degree to which you have interacted with other pilgrims is going to have an impact on how you feel post-Camino. You know, if it was a very social thing, you know, I walked with people on the Camino Frances and it was like they were just on this pub crawl. It was one big party, you know, from start to finish. You know, I've met other people who were very introspective and reflective, and, you know, they're probably having a slightly different experience. Other things that are going to impact how you feel afterwards are whether you were injured or not. I was very lucky on my last one that I didn't have any injuries at all. I had a knee problem in the last few days. But you know, compare that to my first Camino where I was injured when I started and I was bandaged and seeing physios, and you know, it wasn't as an easier Camino as it might have been, you know. So injuries and things like that are going to impact you and your mood and your emotional state. One of the things that will influence how you feel afterwards, and I don't want to get into this whole debate of, you know, what's the difference between a hike and a pilgrimage and a you know, a pilgrim and a tourist and all the rest of it. But I was going to say that the thing that can impact how you feel afterwards is kind of whether you feel fulfilled or not. And that comes down to the purpose behind your Camino. Did you go on a Camino as an interesting hike, just to get some fresh air, have a break, you know, see some nice scenery, eat some nice food? You know, and there's a spectrum here, isn't there? You know, up to, was it a devout religious pilgrimage for you, you know? And there's some middle ground, which kind of is where I tend to sit, in that I'm generally searching for something. I'm wanting to reflect and reprioritize and, you know, have deep reflection and lots of I was going to say solitudinal thought. I don't think that's a word, but lots of time thinking on my own and mulling stuff over. To me, that's the essence of a Camino, really. So was it a nice walk, or were you out there trying to find something or fix something that you felt needed fixing, maybe something that wasn't quite in balance in your life, and so on. So the purpose of your walk can influence how you feel afterwards. And then, of course, with that in mind, whether you've got a result or not. So this is always interesting for first-time pilgrims. When you set out, what purpose did you have in mind? So again, all I can do is share my first Camino. I basically set out wanting to have the same experience as the character Tom in the movie The Way. And I did, funnily enough. Let's not sort of go into that too deeply, but what do I mean by that? I wanted to let go of my day-to-day life. I wanted no distraction. I wanted the headspace, the freedom to think about my life, my priorities, what was important to me, and kind of what am I doing here? What's my real purpose, and that kind of stuff. So it was some pretty deep thinking. Not everybody starts out on a Camino like that. This is what I'm talking about. You might be perfectly happy where your life is. I guess I was saying that I felt I needed to reconsider what I was doing and what my priorities were. So it was a deeply sort of emotional and reflective journey for me. And so the post-Camino impact, my feelings post-Camino would have been vastly different had I fulfilled that expectation or not. And I largely did. I as usually happens, it was coming towards the end, and I felt that I was getting some clarity around what was important to me and what I needed to be kind of doing and changing and working on when I got home. So, sorry this is a bit of a ramble, but it's a pretty tough topic to cover because we're all sort of very different people. So let me come back to my own experience over my last Camino. And did I suffer from the Camino Blues? Yep, and I still am. So, my name's Rob and I'm a Caminoholic, so if you're watching this because you're suffering from the Camino Blues, I do as well. So I'll talk about why I think I suffer from it and what I do about it. So let me talk about my last Camino a bit and some of those things that impacted how I feel about it now. So first of all, it was a long one. It was 60 days, although physically not that difficult. I kept down to 20, 25 Ks a day mostly. It was very remote. It was intentionally remote. I walked the Via de la Plata because I knew it would be remote. And I didn't want distraction and clutter and too many other people around. I just wanted to be alone and think, because I know that that's the way I enjoy my Caminos best. And I was very happy walking alone. It was great. And I think what happens, particularly if you're walking more than about a week or so, is you start to enjoy the simplicity of life on the Camino. If you're able to unplug from your day-to-day life, which I generally do, I run a business, but people look after that while I'm away. I talk to my wife for 10 minutes every morning. Other than that, I'm unplugged. And I enjoy the very simple life of, where will I get breakfast tomorrow? What time will I start walking? Put the backpack on, start walking. I don't sort of set out each day with any particular thoughts in mind or objectives. I know where I'm going, but depending on what I see along the way, I'll stop wherever I want. I'll talk to the cows and the pigs and, whatever. And I have a very unstructured day with no distraction and no plan, if you like, and no things that I have to do, which I think is extremely liberating. And I probably ought to do a video on accommodation booking and pack transport, because that kind of comes into it. So I would book a day ahead. I carried everything in my pack, so I had total freedom. I didn't have to really worry about anything, and it was glorious. I just love that simplicity of life. What happened when I got home? That was interesting. And this is my fourth Camino. Well, I did 3 different routes, sort of back to back on this one. It's my 4th time away. A few things happen which happen to me every time, to be honest. Very, very hard to engage with my work life back home. Very hard. And I know that, I generally have a little bit of a break after my Camino. I'm in a very lucky position where, I run my own business, so I can take as much time off as I like, and I generally have a few days buffer. So after my last Camino, I spent a few days in France with my sister, kind of chilling and unwinding, and then I get back before I start work. But to go from that lifestyle, which if you enjoy the Camino, you must enjoy, of simplicity, lack of clutter, lack of having to make decisions all day, to suddenly having to make 300 decisions every day, stick to, have deadlines, it is extremely difficult. So recognize that. That's going to be, if you're still working or if you have a lot of commitments at home, that's going to be, something you're going to butt your head against. And I can put it down to noise. It's just noise, not, noise as in terms of volumetric, but just clutter, white noise, things demanding your attention constantly, which you haven't had walking on the Camino, and that's really sort of quite hard to overcome. And someone remarked, I think it was either on the channel or on one of the forums, it's about so many choices. I'd say it's about so many decisions. We have to make hundreds of decisions a day. When you're walking on a Camino, life is so simple. I come to this village, where am I going to eat? Well, there's one cafe. I'm going to eat there. What am I going to eat? Well, they've got a pilgrim's menu. I guess I'll eat that. And all of those decisions that we generally have to make, those dozens or hundreds of decisions every day in our day-to-day life, just fall away, and we realise that perhaps all of that decision-making is kind of unnecessary. It gets in the way of actually enjoying life. So that can be frustrating, Stop asking me, You just want to get back to that simple life on the Camino. I have to say it doesn't impact my work because I've come to expect it. I'm very disciplined at work. During my work day, I'm not sort of fantasizing about the next Camino. I'm getting my work done. A lot of people rely on me, and I have responsibility for a lot of people. So, I get the work done. But overall, it's difficult to get into that mindset again. You will come back perhaps with a different sense of purpose and values. And again, this goes back to the comment that I read on the forum recently. It kind of depends where your start point was. If you walked the Camino and it kind of reinforced your thoughts about life and purpose and values, then that's great. There's no immediate change. If it caused you to reevaluate considerably your place in the world and what's important to you and your values and so on, then there's a little bit more conflict that perhaps you're struggling with. And another thing that I noticed somebody wrote recently was that, they're only a month, 2 months back from their Camino, and it almost feels like a dream. They can't believe that they were actually there. Now they're back in their sort of day-to-day life. That whole Camino experience seems like a dream. And I thought that was a wonderful way of explaining it. Because, I've been going through updating my blog. I kind of do it in a rush when I'm on Camino, and I'm going through and editing the text and things like that. And it seems very remote. It was only 2 months ago that I was there. It was 2 months ago that I was in Moshir and Finisterre, and 3 months ago that I was walking on the VDLP. But it seems like a dream, and that can be a little bit frustrating because you think, I put all that time and effort into it and I enjoyed it so much, and it's slipping away from me, and I don't want it to slip away. I don't want to miss those feelings and those memories. And so that kind of brings me on to what do I do to fix all of that? Firstly, I would say it's pretty hard to fix, but I'll give you some tips. And this is why I think so many people are, what's the term, repeat offenders when it comes to the Camino. you probably get different reactions when people have walked their first Camino. Some people have kind of go, oh yeah, that was interesting, you know, I saw a bit of Spain and had a bit of fun and drank lots of beer and, you know, whatever. And again, it's that spectrum. You know, some people will go, oh, it was really good, but it was so hard, like, oh, you know, that was a one-off, I don't think I'd want to do it again. And then, I don't know what percentage, but at the other end of the scale, you get some people who are going, that was the best thing ever. That was the best thing I've ever done in my life. I want to do it again next month. You know, and this is where you get these feelings of people coming back saying, I want to buy an albergue. You know, yeah, that was me. I actually chatted to a few people about the possibility of doing it. But you know, it can impact people in different levels, of course. So, how do we sort of overcome some of these, I guess, challenges that we may have emotionally? One thing that I do is to constantly review and remember and kind of relive the experience. Now, if you are planning your first Camino or you've just walked your current one, let me give you a word of warning. When you come home and you start spouting off to all your family and friends about how wonderful the Camino was, and you know, every conversation they have with you starts with, oh, when I was in Astorga, and oh, when I was in Atapuerca, and you know, when I was walking up this hill, they tire of it very, very quickly. It's maybe a poor analogy, but it's a little bit like, you know, war veterans very often don't talk about their experiences only with other war veterans. It's a little bit like that with Camino pilgrims. You'll have a much more listening ear with other pilgrims rather than sort of family and friends around you, because they don't understand. They don't understand what you've been through. They don't understand you know, the physical elements, the emotional elements, the spiritual elements. So, you know, I would suggest, by all means, you know, share the highlights, and you know, answer questions and things like that. But don't push it at people, because they'll soon very tire of it. They won't get it, you know. So you went for this hike, you know, what was so great about it? So that can happen. People will tire of it. So how do I kind of review and remember? One of the things I do is this YouTube channel. You might think it's for you, and no, it's just as much for me. So I love to talk about Camino topics. I love to share thoughts about the topics, hear other people's thoughts. So do make sure you comment down below. That keeps the Camino alive, you know, in my mind and my heart. That's one way that I do it. And also, I mean, this channel is a little bit like, I was telling somebody the other day, you know, they said, well, why do you keep doing all these YouTube videos? I said, well, one, I enjoy it. Two, you know, it keeps the Camino alive for me. But three, it kind of helps newbie pilgrims as well. You know, I've had lots of fantastic feedback over the years, so thank you for that. You know, people have said that was very helpful, and you know, it helped me avoid this problem. And you know, even on my last Camino, people came up to me and said, "Love that video on the blisters. You know, I haven't had any blisters." You know, that's good. I'm glad that I've been able to help people out and help them have a better Camino. So you know, that's one way that I do it. Another way that I do it is with my blog. So if you're planning your first Camino, I would urge you to either keep a journal or to do a blog. And there's many different ways of doing it. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I notice a lot of people use an app or a website called Find Penguins. I think that's an easy way of blogging, and you can upload photos and text and things like that. Why is that important? Because it's not necessarily for family and friends, it's for you. Like I mentioned, I'm updating my blog at the moment, and it's, you know, my Camino finished 2 months ago, and I want to update it and enrich it and make sure that I can make it as good as possible for me, so that as I'm reflecting on it and rereading it over the years, I don't forget, you know, the memories and the experiences and things like that. I don't want my Camino to just be a dream, you know, that's fading in the background. I want to be able to relive it. And that's a really good way that I do it on the blog. So at the moment, I'm spending about an hour each evening just going through day by day and updating the text, and oh yeah, that happened, I'll put that in. And I've got someone helping me with the videos and improving those and so on. So another couple of weeks and all that will be updated. So I do that. I do my YouTube channel, I do a blog. So do some form of record keeping yourself, be it a journal, take loads of photos. What a lot of people don't do is take video. Videos can tell a much deeper story sometimes than just photos. And let me give you a tip. Where's my phone? Sorry to digress a little bit, but if you're going to take videos on your Camino, think about where you're going to display them. If you're going to put them on a YouTube channel or something, always shoot landscape, because we watch TVs and cinemas and things in a landscape format. If you're going to post them on Facebook, TikTok or something, then generally a portrait format works. But little short video clips and things are nice as well. So record your journey. Another way to, I think, help keep the Camino alive and help keep those blues at bay is to engage with other people. So I mentioned, engage with other people who've walked the Camino. How could you do that? There's a lot of Facebook groups out there, so maybe find a Facebook group. There's a lot of sort of meetup groups. There's one here in Sydney, which sorry, the people who run it, I haven't been to it for years, but I will get along. They sort of meet once a month and that kind of thing. I was talking to a lady on Zoom the other day who's actually one of the forum moderators, who's based in the States, who runs one of the local sort of Camino chapters, so that they're very popular. So it can be an online catch-up, it could be a face-to-face catch-up. And also have a look at Eval's forum. I think it's the URL is caminodesantiago.me. I spend quite a lot of time on that, actually. I spend way too much time on it, and then I kind of slap myself and, I'm not on there for a couple of weeks. But there's some wonderful members on there who share some great advice. It's an opportunity, when you've walked your Camino to share with people who are planning their first Camino, give them tips and so on. It can be a bit overwhelming, actually. I mean, I was looking last night, and one lady was saying how frustrated she was trying to find shoes, and I thought, oh no, I can see where this is going to go. And now she's had about 100 suggestions on different shoes. 'Cause people just want to help. But it's an amazing forum. So that's a really good way to stay engaged. So that's how to, I think, keep the Camino alive in your mind and your heart, which I think is important. What then? Some more sort of tangible things. You may come back from your Camino with quite a lot of conflict in your mind about where your life should go from here. You may feel that you need to reprioritize things. You may need to change things quite dramatically in your life. I would just say, don't go nuts. Let things settle. Pat and I came back from our last joint Camino and seriously thought about buying a cafe or an albergue or something, but we sat on that for a few months and then realised that it wasn't that practical, and what we really liked was walking a Camino, not running an albergue. So, if you've got some of these thoughts in your head, by all means sort of do some research and stuff, but take a little bit of time before you make decisions. And I suppose what I've found from my very first Camino 8 years ago to this most recent one, the lasting impacts that I find from walking a Camino is that I just prefer a simpler life. I'm much less materialistic. I was going to say my wife has bullied me into buying a new car. Let me rephrase that. My car is 23 years old and I love it, but she said, while you're still working and can afford it, why not get a new one, and then that'll last you, until you can't drive anymore. So I'm thinking, yeah, all right, it's probably, my current one's not going to last another 20 years. I don't value material possessions like I used to, perhaps. Clothes, I almost wear Camino type stuff day to day. I'm wearing a business shirt because I was in business meetings this morning, but that's the only business element I'm wearing. So I lead a much more relaxed approach to life, even in business. Still professional, but I don't stress about things. I think that's one of the lasting benefits that I've found from walking Caminos, and reprioritizing in my mind and understanding what's important to me and what's not. I really don't get stressed out like I used to prior to my first Camino, and maybe that's one of the things that I like about doing subsequent Caminos, that it kind of tops up, some of these benefits. So, and probably, just lastly, what's one of the things that remains is that I'm very happy in my own company. And this is going to be different for everybody, of course, depending on, whether you're a very social person, extrovert, introvert, and all the rest of it. I find particularly after this last one, how would I put this? I've got to be careful, this is going out in public, but I'm home alone at the moment because, Pat has family health issues and she's away with family. I'm quite comfortable, I'm not feeling particularly lonely or anything like that because I'm kind of used to being on my own and the solitude, and comfortable and happy with that. Of course, I look forward to it coming home, but, that's one of the changes that I've seen within me. I'm perfectly happy just being on my own a lot, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble, so there we go. Whoever posted that question, thank you. I think it's a really important thing to talk about and to highlight. If you have walked a Camino and you felt perfectly fine at the end of it, well done. Comment down below. Let us know. If you've walked a Camino and you feel dreadful for some reason. Tell us down below. As I said, it's a real spectrum, and it kind of depends what your start point was, where you were emotionally before you started, and where you are when you finish. But I suppose the key thing I wanted to share was just these are some of the things that can happen, and some of the impacts that can happen. So maybe it won't come as a big surprise to you if it happens to you, and some thoughts on how to cope with stuff. So there we go. End of ramble for this week. Bye for now.